50. It is October 17th, 2013, and roll call, please.
Director Boyd?
Here.
Director Harvey?
Here.
Director Slater-Carter?
Present.
Director Tholo?
Here.
And Director Protasek? Here.
Okay. President's statement. I have a few things I'm going to say. It's a short meeting, and I am not going to take them up with the President's statements. First, in the news last week was that the Mid-Peninsula Water District had $250,000 embezzled over a few years by a secretary. And I want to assure the public that our policies and procedures here, policies and procedures for those who want to see if we have a few things we keep track of. I asked Clemens to make sure that our policies and procedures were up to date. As far as our cash handling and our check handling, because this woman was writing checks to herself. Actually, at the first meeting of the month, the treasurer and the other member of the finance committee, no, it's not, the treasurer and the vice chair go over and sign checks. All of our checks have to be signed twice. And one of the duties of a board member is to be available to come in and sign checks if they need to be signed at some point in time when it's not the regular meeting, if there's a short notice. And the bills are always attached to the checks so that we can go through and verify what the billing is for. So it's the Mosquito Abatement District also had this problem a few years ago, and as a special district we stay on top of that. As everyone here knows, and watching this knows, there's an election, and I received some calls. Some folks had received some information that said that this district was put at a safety risk, and I am very concerned. I think candidates can argue and take different positions, but I think saying the district is irresponsible and putting its ratepayers at risk is in itself very reckless. Fear-mongering works very well for national politics. I think it's irresponsible for local politics. The cost of an intertie with Half Moon Bay, that's Coastside County Water District, would be over $2 million. MWSD's share would be probably $1 million. The location of the pipe has already been decided that it would be at the south end of the airport. We did that when we negotiated the emergency connection agreement. In that area, Montara Water and Sanitary has 3 wells that can and will supply water even in a drought. CCWD relies on San Francisco Hetch Hetchy water for 80% of its water. And it and San Francisco PUC, as you saw in the paper this week, are preparing for a drought. Starting this year, after 2 years of low rainfall. The fact is that MWSD can supply water to CCWD, but there is no need for MWSD to import water. We have 3 productive wells in that area and more than adequate supply for the rest of the district, even in drought periods. We could ship water, certainly, to CCWD if they needed it. But the only beneficiary of an intertie is CCWD. And this would ultimately be a way to consolidate MWSD into CCWD, something I think the electorate should choose. Financially, an intertie with CCWD would be a waste of money because of the pressure zones and overall systems engineering in each system. For operations, fire, and other code compliance, industry standards, and from an engineering perspective, the new 500,000 gallon tank, which we're in the process of getting built, we've gone through the permit process and we're working at that end of the paperwork first, is needed. An intertie cannot replace this tank. It's an engineering standard for firefighting to have tanks, not interties for safety. This must be This tank must be MWSD's priority for operational effectiveness and overall safety. CCWD is dependent on San Francisco for its water. MWSD is self-sufficient and needs to continue to build our system for operational effectiveness and safety. So, and I do want to address that the question about lawsuits and fiscal irresponsibility on the part of this board. This board has, in the last few years, we've had 3 lawsuits. Every single one has been to defend and protect the assets of the district. One was to protect our water supply, one was to protect our boundaries, and the other one was an irresponsible CEQA suit of somebody who was trying to stop us from building the 500,000-gallon tank. I'd be happy to discuss this with anyone, with everyone, show you facts, show you documents, but in fact this district is not throwing money away and it is not putting our citizens at a safety risk. Thank you very much. Let's go into public hearing, oral comments. Do we have oral comments from the audience? Seeing none, do we have oral comments from the board?
Yeah, I have a comment. As a SAM director, I have to respond to a statement that was made 2 weeks ago in the Half Moon Bay Review in the editorial section. I have to respond to correct and state what the facts were on recycled water. So I was there. Scott was there. I have to respond. So there are 3 points. The recycled water project was developed not by CCWD but by SAM. Specifically, it was developed by Scott. Scott was the leader in that development. Scott and Rick Lohman were the directors that pushed that and fought for that and got that through. And they actually got it functioning. They had a unit, they had a recycling unit on SAM property, recycling water from all 3 districts. And that recycled water was then trucked to the golf course. So it was working, and it was a SAM project. MWSD made the request that MWSD receive a portion of the recycled water, that portion of the liquid that came from our district. We didn't make the request to be, to make money off it or share financially. Our only request, and the person who made that request specifically, his picture is up on the wall. Paul Perkovic fought for that issue. Paul Perkovic said that we need to have our share of the recycled water back. We didn't make the demand that we get financial portion back. Okay? And then the final point I'd like to make is that the recycle process was going smoothly, and we could have gone on further and made the process a permanent process and enlarged it. But that process was stopped not by the SAM directors from MWSD, as the article indicates, but it was stopped by CCWD through 2 Half Moon Bay SAM representatives. They're the ones that stopped it. We wanted it to keep going. The representatives from Half Moon Bay stopped it. We didn't stop it. So again, I just want to review it one more time so that it's clear. These are the facts. Scott and I were there. The recycling project was developed not by CCWD but solely by SAM, and Scott and Rick Leonard and myself were the ones that pushed that and developed that. We only made the request through Paul Perkovic's a constant, annoying pushing that we receive our portion of the recycled water back. We didn't make a demand to make money off the process. And then finally, we wanted to continue the process and have that as a growth development and make it and recycle for the whole district to have everyone get their recycled water back. CCWD stopped that process through Half Moon Bay directors, SAM directors. Okay, those are the facts. I have to report those facts as a SAM director. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I've got a comment, but I thought I'd wait till the director's report unless you'd rather get a comment now.
No, that's fine.
No, that's fine.
You may wait if you'd rather.
It's up to you. I don't care.
Okay, let's wait until the end. It's just a few minutes.
Throw in one on this topic. Part of what's been said about recycled water, and it was a joint effort, and I was happy to be right in the thick of it. Certainly we put in some time on this. We did meet initially with CCWD after we had been doing quite a bit of work on it. We had 2 or more joint meetings with them. They did put up a slide deck one time saying that they would bring the checkbook and pay for the whole thing. But the fact of the matter is that was interesting, but it was more designed to say and do exactly the project that we want. What we did, in fact, was we took a good hard look at economically and demand, who could use this water, who could we get the water to, what would it take, what are the current best practices and best technology for treating the water, where would we locate the processing, what would we permit the water to be used for, and by that I mean consider Cunha that used to have, or the soccer fields have been. Do you want your kids running through sprinklers that are, pumping out recycled water? It's not a great plan. So we wanted to be sure to think that through, and we did. We did in 2003. We had a really big water summit where we had people interested in water, recycled water from all over the place, from the National Oceanographic, NOAA. We had people from the EPA, we had people from water agencies all over the place. CCWD was certainly there. We were there in force. We had a bunch of scientists and engineers present. It was a very good working group session. And we spent a lot of time leading up to that summit meeting with our counterparts from CCWD and other local organizations to make sure that the event really had all the stakeholders in place and involved. It kind of came to a culmination of our effort in an application for federal funding. What was pretty clear was that with the resources of the COSIDA alone, we were unlikely to be able to pursue this. The money was really not there from CCWD to cover the full cost of this thing. So we put together a really good funding request in conjunction with Anna Eshu's office and put in for the funding that it would take to make the water available to the 2 principal potential users. That would be Nursemen's Exchange and the Ocean Colony golf courses. Making sure that what we provided would not only meet their needs for the purity of the water, with in particular very concerned about potential contaminants that might impact at Nursemen's, that might impact the crops they're trying to grow, and at Ocean Colony, making sure, for example, it didn't have a lot of sodium loading that would make growing the very specialized grasses that they grow. Don't want to interfere with that mechanism. If you have too much sodium, they would have had to look at changing out the grasses. But they had focused on grasses that would require the least amount of water for the area that they've got. So it's not a small thing. They have a lot of grass. So economically, we had to have a package that we could put together that would be economical for them and work for us, and to get the kind of technology that it would take to clean the water to that degree. It was very clear that federal funding was something well worth going after. And to the notion that it was lack of cooperation, I will say CCWD came in, pounding the shoe on the table about what they needed to have. But the fact of the matter is the water is owned by the people who own the three agencies that make up SAM. CCWD has a role to play in water distribution, but they didn't have any role to play in ownership of that water. The law on that is black and white. We did seek specialized counsel on that topic and came away understanding very clearly what that was. That wasn't litigation, that was getting good counsel. The package that we put together and that we submitted to Congressmember Eshoo had very strong support from local government agencies, from local and state environmental organizations, and from others. Let me just give you a sample. So we had NOAA, which has long been a proponent of finding a way to reuse water. We had the Bay Area Council Economic
And
Institute.
NOAA is not the guy who rode the ship.
Yeah,
The whale.
I was,
National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Thank you.
You get a cookie out there.
I couldn't come up with atmospheric, thank you. The Bay Area Council Economic Institute came in with support. The San Mateo County Health System came in with a letter of support from the director there. Sharice McHugh wrote a letter on behalf of the Half Moon Bay Coastside Chamber of Commerce. We had a letter of support from the Coastside Democrats, and letters of support from Sierra Club and Surfrider and many current and former members of the local political scene here on the coastside. This was a really good project, but let me add one more little element to this. This came at a time when federal funding was nearly impossible for anybody to get, and quite a number of projects were submitted to Congresswoman Eshoo's office. She took all of these forward. She wrote us a really great letter of support and took it forward and tried to get support. But of, I believe, the 40 some odd projects, I believe 2 out of that entire lot got funded. So it's very disappointing, but the economics of the time made that as unlikely as it has ever been in my lifetime. One thing I'll add is that in the 3 or so years since, the technology has continued to improve and continued to lower in cost. And I and others have continued to look at what can be feasible and how soon, as the technology continues to improve, we're going to have a lot more flexibility about where we might be able to place facilities to do this. And instead of doing some grand scale thing like the facility up in Daly City is a magnificent facility, but it's all one big one, and that's not the only way to do it anymore. And look forward to when we get another chance to reassemble the troops, get the economy a little bit stronger, and get out there and take another run at this, because this is something where it's very clear that water is a pretty precious resource, and discharging it directly into the ocean may not long-term be the best thing that we can do. Right now, it is, but I would like to get to that point where we discharge little to nothing into the ocean, and at the same time, because of what we're doing with cleaning it up with recycling, have even fewer contaminants wind up in our environment, because we'll be taking more out, because the kind of uses for recycled water dictate a much cleaner product. Oh, and I will point out one other thing real quickly, and that is, of the names that I read, you might have noticed that there was one local agency that did not participate in writing a letter of support for that project. And we did invite them, but they elected not to participate.
Thank you.
So you're finished? Scott, you finished? You're speaking. You're through with that for now?
I believe he is.
Okay, you know what? I think I better speak now, given that I didn't come into this anticipating needing to provide a rebuttal, but the reason for these discussions is they're responding to an editorial opinion piece that I put in the Half Moon Bay Review on October 9th. And what I'm identifying in that article is what I see as a consistent pattern of what has happened to this district. Now, let me first say that I've been an avid supporter of acquiring the water system. I've spent many years working for the district. But what I'm seeing now is a pattern of litigation that is just a general approach that's been necessary for the district up to a certain point. It was necessary to be in a position to handle this legally in terms of the acquisition. They were successful at it. I applaud them for it. My concern is the pattern of what happened with the county, what happened with North Coast County Water District, and the potential for litigation going forward, particularly with San Vicente Creek, the watershed that we share with CCWD, and the issues around the Caltrans property, which is surplus property now and is destined to be open space. There's some question about what's the best way to manage that. I'd very much like to see the community involved in that. My concern is that when I went out for the last year and a half talking to all these agencies, talking to North Coast County Water, talking to CCWD, talking to LAFCO, talking to the county, we're at loggerheads with every one of them. And my concern is that we've got to do something proactively and exhibit some leadership in changing that. We've been successful in a win-lose battle. And we need to find a way to move to a win-win. And so, for instance, on the intertie, that's being portrayed here as it's not economically viable.
No, I'm sorry, Chris, it's not portrayed, it's an engineering
I let
opinion.
you speak. I'm going to speak my piece.
You speak
if you
with
want
fact.
you want to interfere
You
with me.
speak with engineering expertise
I
that
don't have engineering
I
expertise.
reviewed my notes
There's
with
something
an engineer.
specifically that you have a concern about what I said. You state what it is.
You are not backing it up with engineering.
Tell me what you're talking
I
about.
think
All right.
we need to move on. Thank you
Let's
very
go
much.
on.
No, I'm
No,
not
we're moving on.
No, we're not moving I'm going to say.
Jim, would you like to take
You
this?
all
Thank you.
had your say. I'm going to have my say as well. If
Jim?
you've got a concern with facts, then please stop me. But
I
the
have-
benefit to that intertie is not just us. The benefit to the intertie could be CCWD and North Coast. The concern that you guys have is it's a first step to consolidation. I think are failing to look at that.
Let's have order. You know something?
No, you guys you were able to say what you wanted to say.
Yeah, but you know something?
I want to say what I need to say.
Scott and I were reporting on what we did as SAM directors.
No, you were
Yes, they were.
responding.
And you were talking.
No, there was nothing. What you were describing was a reaction to a
Please
statement
listen to our
I made.
attorney. Please listen to our attorney. Thank you.
What I might recommend is that in order to move matters along for the agenda, but also to allow for fairness, would be to say each person who wants to speak would have 3 minutes or 5 minutes, but I think you might want to put a time limit on it.
I think that's...
Okay. So let's go ahead and let everyone. I mean, Chris, you want to finish your how much longer do you want to
You
talk?
set the rules. I'm fine
Okay.
with that.
Okay, then let's give everyone who wants to speak 3 more minutes to speak. Right?
Let's see, how long did you guys speak? Just, off the cuff, before I was aware that what you were doing was responding to my
we
editorial.
were giving a SAM report on recycled water.
No,
it
you weren't.
seems
You were
like.
Yes, they
responding
were.
to my editorial.
Well, we're trying to correct
There was
facts.
nothing in your report that had anything
Okay,
to
Chris,
do with current events. and
you
so on.
got 3 more minutes.
Okay.
All right?
So the concern I've got about the intertie is that looking holistically at the coast, there is a benefit to North Coast to that intertie and to CCWD. Both of them are dependent on Hetch Hetchy. Both of them have one single point of failure in the Lindemar district and in CCWD. If they intertied between each other, that would be a very solid way for them to get a second source into their main water supply. We're paranoid that that's going to lead to a consolidation. I don't buy it. I want to explore it. I think you guys have done a really great job in rebuilding district, and you ought to stand on your 2 feet and talk to people and work with these other districts proactively. because you've done the hard work. The finances aren't far off from where they should be, even if you were consolidated, right? So what I don't understand is why you continue to say, no, we've got to take this hardline approach. It reminds me of Nancy Mall in the tunnel, where CPR1 said we can't have a tunnel, it's growth inducing, and she cut out discussions with anybody else. You're just as polarized. You're cutting out discussions with a major part of the coast side that would support you, except that you're doing it the way you're doing it.
Okay, thank you. All right, any more reports from directors?
Do I get 3 minutes?
Yeah, you get 3 minutes, Bob. Go ahead.
Well, no, I guess I'll go. Sorry, I thought this was going to go straight to here, and that's why I didn't want to sit here. I don't want to get rehash, but I would like to point out that we have reached out, and I keep pointing this out. I have met with existing sitting supervisors, with past supervisors. I have met and established communication with CCWD. And we talk about what we need to do, and I agree with that. I agree with reaching out. But you're saying there's a problem in the future because if we haven't done anything in the past, you keep forgetting that. I mean, this is like the 5th time I'm mentioning the same damn things. And you got to at least acknowledge it. Okay? You can't say it didn't happen when I know I had breakfast with Gordon. I've met with him. So, don't tell me we're not trying that. Maybe not on your schedule, not on your calendar, but we have done that, and we will continue to do that. And yeah, there's differences of stronger opinions of one or the other, and I think that we need to work through that. But we're not as we're being portrayed. And I'm tired of pointing out when someone says you don't cooperate, having to correct them, saying, well, where the hell were you when I was meeting with them? Because I did. Okay, I'm going back in case the light starts.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Catherine, I'll give you back the
Thank you.
meeting, so
Let's move into old business. We have no public hearing, we have no consent agenda, we have no new business. Let's move into old business. Thank you.
So we have, I want to mention, this is the first meeting that I attend here where we have only one item scheduled. So I think I have to say that. And the topic is, it's an old business item, review and possible action concerning district strategic plan. So, well, first of all, I think it became clear to the board that this would be a good timing to get oriented themselves. We have, since 10 years, we own the water system. We're able to fix it up, repeal the moratorium. We have a solid water system running. Actually, on the sewer side, we were successful in reducing sewer spills, for example. A lot of other things that simply lead to, I think, essentially a new way. We have to look around, we have to orientate ourselves. We just got a garbage contract approved with Ecology. So there's a sense of completion, and that is a good opportunity to look at where do we want to go in the future. And that's why the board asked staff to contact potential consultants. We contacted a number of consultants that are active in all of California. We focused on firms that were on the California Special Districts Association webpage, listed as vendors in that field, and contacted pretty much all of them, and received 3 proposals back, one from BHI Consulting, one from Barbara Gonzalez, and one from Rauch Communications. And we presented those at a prior meeting, I think it was the September 5th meeting, to the board. At that meeting, the board then agreed that any member of the board could makes additional suggestions for potential firms to the general manager. And we've received one suggestion, and that is for Bill Chiat with the Alta Mesa Group. I've contacted Bill Chiat and unfortunately haven't gotten a response yet from him. So far we have invited two firms. We looked at the proposals. We see that there are two very solid proposals that we've received so far. One is from BHA Consulting, the other one is from Ralph Communications. And we have Brent Ives with BHA Consulting available tonight, and he would like to present his firm tonight and answer any questions the board might have. We have Martin Ralph with Ralph Communications scheduled for the December 5 meeting. And this is only for board information and discussion.
Good,
So-
thank you. Why don't, if the board members would like, I'm gonna go sit in the audience because this is too close. Anyone else wants to join me? Feel free.
It's okay. Yes.
Do you need, I guess it's bright enough you don't need light. And I promise not to sit over the camera. Excuse me, Chris.
So is that the green light? Thank you.
Go for it.
Thank you all.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm pleased to say I'm here tonight. I think that you all are doing the right thing in looking out in the future and understanding that a strategic plan might be what's called for this district. I made notes of the kinds of things I can see that need to be in your strategic plans, at least some things, based on
Conversation?
now experience. I think that what's important for the board and for everyone in the community to know is that the value of a strategic plan is that there's a deliberate collective direction. Now, as I was saying earlier to someone, I said collective is the hard part, as demonstrated tonight. Collective is not easy. Collective is something that doesn't come free or easy. Anytime you put 5 elected officials or 5 people together, there's bound to be disagreements. That's part of the beauty and part of the process that we've been given by the public. I say we because I want to introduce myself a little bit. Here's my background. BHI Management Consulting, 25 years as a technical manager at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, 12 years as an independent consultant to special districts. I may work with some cities here and there, but almost all of my work is with special districts. We do strategic planning, organizational matters, board governance, executive recruiting. I'm a faculty member for the CSDA areas of governance, strategic planning, team building, organizational matters. I'm doing a workshop tomorrow on governance in Mountain View, speaking up in Monterey on the same thing for the mosquito and vector control people next week. It's what I do. Every week I'm doing either strategic plans, and we're involved, my firm right now is involved in 9 strategic plans in the state, up to and including firms as large as, or agencies as large as Orange County Sanitation District, and as small as Las Colinas Sanitary District over in Marin. All that to say is that the one piece up there that's important, I think, that maybe is a unique experience is the 6 years as the current mayor and 14 years as a councilman for the city of Tracy. Tracy's out in the Central Valley. We were once a farm community that is now more of a bedroom community. It's what happens to a lot of the valley towns, a lot of pressure to grow, a lot of issues that come, a lot of rancor that comes along with those issues. Along with being the mayor and a councilman for that long, though, I've been on the LAFCO and I've been on the Council of Governments and I've been on this commission, that commission, a lot of time on that side of the dais. I've estimated around somewhere near 10,000 hours. Been involved in things similar to what you all are as a community. Remember, you're all a community are involved in here. It's not easy. water for fighting thing. I mean, that seems to be true. And the value of the process that we find ourselves in as a governing body is the ability to be able to functionally conflict, to have those conflicts, to have differing opinions, and be able to get through it so that you can still functionally make the next decision without a lot, and this is not easy, I'm not diminishing this, without the collective or cumulative effect of what happened, our disagreements of the item number 4. Item number 5, start with a clean slate. That's the ideal. It's very difficult to arrive at that, especially when you have issues that are polarizing. That being said, each one of us arrives, and I'm almost going into governance more than I am strategic planning. Each one of us arrives at the chair, at the dais, in the same way, in most cases. Somehow the public's process, whether it be an election, an appointment, or whatever, puts us all there, and we're co-equal in that sense. That allows us to have our own opinions. The problem usually that occurs herein is the process by which we'll manage the opinions. And that's what I wrote down. If I'm going to help you with a strategic plan, I'm going to make sure that there's somewhere in it, there's very clear criteria for how you do your board guidelines and protocols and what's expected and who can talk to whom when. And that clarity is, if it's absent, it's a wild card. And when that wild card in this public agency kind of governance structure can get to the point where it's not just wild, it's completely divergent and you have problems. That being said, the reason I got involved in strategic planning years ago was because I sat on the other side of the city manager as a rookie council member, and I looked over his shoulder and it said Tracy 2020 plan, and I thought, oh boy, we'll spend some time with that. Fast forward 3 years later, I looked over his shoulder, there's still the 2020 plan sitting there, and I said, golly, 3 years have gone by, my bad, we haven't spent any time with it, but his bad too, he hasn't pulled it off as a here. And I said, Fred, reach back there and get that binder, and he said he knew what I was up to, and you know what happens when vinyl binders are by each other too long, they stick, and he had to stick his hands in there, and I thought, what a waste that the city of Tracy went to do this plan. Probably spent, who knows. The consultants had a great time with that over the years that it took to put that together. And some of the things that were in there happened, but a lot of it was just window dressing, and it was a shelf sitter in my mind. I said, there's got to be a better way, and I was transitioning out of Lawrence Livermore I knew I was going to in the future when I retire and so forth. And I thought there's got to be a better way for public agencies to plan together. And so I came up with a strategic planning model, and I've been perfecting that for the last 12 years. The importance is that the end result is useful. That's what's important. Whatever process, whatever consultant you pick, what's important to you is that you don't turn around a year from now or 2 or 5 years from now and say, where's that strategic plan? That can't be what you're aiming at. That can't be what anybody wants. The problem is it's constructed in a way that it will become useful and part of the life of the district. Not just a roadmap, but one that's dog-eared with yellow stickies. I know of nothing better when I see one of the general managers or board members that I've worked with over the years at conferences here and there, and I say, how's your strategic plan doing? And they pull it out. And it's happened a few times. They pull it out and say, oh, we're doing this, and we've updated it then. So a strategic plan needs to be a living document because the strategy today will no doubt be different than 5 years from now. And so you have to manage the process of maintaining your strategy. But it would be easy if it were just me working with him to do a strategic plan like that. But the public agency organizational structure isn't that way, is it? It's got this. And what this means is that there's another whole, quite frankly, a layer in there. Not a professional that's gone to school and gets paid well to do their job, but a layer of people that can be anywhere from a farmer to a nuclear engineer to whatever else. And so that wild card there needs to be a controlled interface, a planned, deliberate interfaces. And a strategic plan allows that if it's done right. So it needs to be useful, it needs to be very deliberate in its interface, and it needs to be something that creates clarity for everybody and keeps working to that end, that clarity end. Clarity for him especially, because he's the one spending district money every day, him and his staff. And clarity for you so that you know he's spending money on the right things, on the things that you collectively, whether it be a 3-2-4-1 or 5-0, that's the process. Any vote's a good vote. Once the vote's taken, it is the will of the people by virtue of the people that are on the board, like it or not. That's just the hard facts of how we deal. Council meeting Tuesday night before last. Went to 11:45 because we start every meeting with about 200 people in the room, and it whittles down over time, but this night everyone stayed because we're going to talk about the airport and the runway length and the impact zone and growth and housing. It was just a big deal, the interfaces. So everybody had their opinion, but at the end of the evening, it was a 4-1 vote. And the tricky part, the best boards, the best public agencies can get through that and go to agenda item number 5 and not have any lingering problems that I'm going to get to Jim because he voted no. That's tough. That's not easy. As you all know, with this much emotion and belief in your position, it's hard to entertain others, but controlled interfaces are what's important here, and there's a lot of wild cards in the process. So now that I've kind of gone on the governance thing, I'm sorry about that, but I just felt like I needed to get that out. I'm going to try to move this forward, and this isn't working, So we're going to talk really quickly, and I don't need to spend a lot of time with this, but I want you to know where I'm heading, and those 3 things are what I'm heading for. Overview of strategic planning, the value of both the process and the product. The product is important, yes, but the process can be equally important because it drives you all together. It makes you consider the future of the district, and at the end result, it'll come up with an instant implementation plan that guides his work, that you can have clear expectations of him and what he does and what he achieves. Remember, since he's the CEO, he achieves things, results, achievements. It's not about activities so much, it's about results and achievements. Why certain planning elements are critical. Review of options in creating a good strategic plan. Consider the best for, some other district that shouldn't be there. Discuss path forward. And we can discuss my proposal, but I don't know if you're quite there yet. And perhaps the board members do. So, having worked with public agencies for now over 20 years and been involved, public agencies need a practical way to plan together as a team so that they could functionally move the agency forward, especially now because never has the spotlight been quite this bright on public agencies. Because the public sentiment is, wow, those public agencies really need close inspection. Fair enough. Can we withstand that inspection? So we need to be clear about our future. That's the most efficient way for us to move forward, is to be clear about our future. Absent clarity, what do we have? We may have diverging direction. Diverging direction is a bad thing. It's inefficient. Okay, in my experience, nothing can mitigate the broad set of common issues within a public agency like a proper strategic plan, like that I've discussed so far. So what's the gain? Sets the overall direction for the agency. It spreads that direction over 5 years or 10 years, depending on how long you want it to be. And that allows you to kind of get things in there and consider them over time rather than have to feel like you need to do it now. A plan is based on the board's vision. And this is a clearly expected expectation of the public for the board to have a vision for the agency and the community, and a good strategic plan should be understandable to anyone because it's optically clear and optically pure. You can see it and understand it. It should not be a huge, thick document. There's a lot of fluff that can be put into these things that consultants, they get paid by the page, and I just don't believe in that. And then a good strategic plan should yield agency efficiency. I mean, if it doesn't do anything to help your efficiency as an agency, then really it's not as valuable as it could be. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line. And it shouldn't cost you an arm or a leg, or a leg. We're under greater public scrutiny. There may be more budget issues coming from the state and God knows who else. We should identify and adopt highest and best practices, programs, plans, and initiatives, which is what that's all about. And it creates clarity and efficiency for the future. So that's a good plan will allow you to focus on the right things. A good plan avoids distraction from the mission. That's what I'm trying to say. It avoids distraction from the mission. Let me say a word about mission. Mission is why the agency exists. That's what a board member should pledge allegiance to that mission. Why the agency exists. Other things are ancillary and supportive of the mission. A good plan will place proper perspective on how this board feels about what is critical versus important. And again, it might not be, I have a suspicion, it might not be that the direction is a 5-0 direction. But that's the process. A vote is a vote. That doesn't mean you have to like it. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. But it does mean that you have to respect the process that yielded that result. Or it should. A good strategic plan plans and programs efficiency. So it has a mission statement, which is so important, and I hope you don't overlook that fact. I talk a lot about mission statement, and the reason I do that is because collectively, boards out there in the state need to understand that's why the public's money gets raked into a pile for them to spend. That is why. To fulfill, protect that mission. The vision then the board cast, what would we like to be able to say about the agency in 5 years? What are those strategic outcomes that we'd like to see happen? In 5 years, we'd love to be able to say this and this and this. Strategic elements are the organization of the plan. Each element has an objective and a strategy to it. Strategic goals and actions then fall out of each of those strategic elements. You want your strategic elements to be broad enough to cover all of the things that could potentially affect your strategy or being able to properly support the mission. It shouldn't be just infrastructure. It can be administrative policies, as demonstrated from what I picked up on tonight. And it becomes a 5-year roadmap. And then that annual planning maintenance, absolutely critical. I've had too many phone calls of, while that would be an element of the strategic plan, a general manager would call me 3 years later and say, you know, we didn't really update our strategic plan. And I tell them, I look at it and I talk to the board, and they're just, it's different now. And it needs to be a deliberate process of maintenance, just like anything else. Boards change, situations change, conditions on the ground change. We got the grant, we didn't get the grant, whatever it might be. But a useful strategic plan must plan real actions. The reason I say that is because too many strategic plans stop at vision and they get very ambiguous implementation with no real substance to it. It's not integrated with the performance of the executive. Remember, an executive loves to have clarity and expectations. And so a strategic plan should create those clarity of expectations. Yeah, you're planning out 5 years, but each year there's going to be some things done that move you in that vector. So I've gone over that. Becomes the way we plan here. The means by which we evaluate the general manager. It's what we show our stakeholders, our new employees, our new board members, our candidates, our regulators when asked, whoever. We really do have a handle on the future here. It's our big picture roadmap, our management tool. So it's team developed, and that's a key critical element. Remember I said the process is almost as important as the product. this is the way things work. The team, the public expects for this team to be doing just that. Yeah, it may be hard at times, but that's what the public has expectation of. They should, quite frankly, most of our public never show up for meetings. They just hope that you're up there in our office being as efficient as you can with their dollars. And we, as electeds, need to be able to go to the, let me pick a store that nobody knows, Piggly Wiggly, and go into the store and be able to face our public that elected us and be able to assure them that we are taking every step we know how to be as efficient as possible. It needs to be well vetted, it needs the proper amount of input. The public has to be invited into this process. My proposal has some public, but I tell you, while it proposes some public input, that's really something that we have to design internally, because you integrate with your, you integrate with your public differently than the district perhaps down the street or up the state, down the state. And so that gets developed, but there's a piece in there for that. It's integrated and linked. It's a useful plan, operationally relevant, and that's by keeping it. And it's a rolling strategy. Let's see what else. So here's your mission statement. Sensitively manage the natural resources entrusted to our care. To provide the people of Montara and Moss Beach with reliable, high-quality water, wastewater disposal services at an equitable price, and to ensure the fiscal and environmental viability of the district for future generations. I like it. But that should be a decision filter for every decision that the board makes. Right there. Does it fit? Are we doing that? And yeah, we might very well disagree on means by which we get there. But we need to have a way to functionally get through that. The best teams can functionally conflict because it ends up with a better product. Because it forces you into a different way of thinking. It says, man, could I be wrong on this? And that's a healthy process. But it can also be a dangerous process if not handled correctly. Vision, often the crux of the matter, quite frankly. Where are we going? What are we going to do? What does that look like? How does that get articulated? Define where the board wants this district to go. Provides clarity for implementing strategy. Quite frankly, strategy supports that vision. The vision becomes the strategy. Strategy supports the vision. Tactics support the strategy. Then implementing strategy through goals, initiatives, and actions, which are tactics, are what the district executive and staff do to make your vision happen. You say where you want to go, board. They'll tell you how you're going to get there. That's an interesting thing. And you know, there's some real careful role distinguishing here on what is a board supposed to do and what is a staff supposed to do in the optimized organization for a public agency. Board should set policy, board should set direction, board should manage their executive with clear expectations. If a board just did those things and managed the achievements and results that their manager, executive was able to achieve, then you're respecting that role. Now, you come together, there's interface there, you come together to do just what you're talking about doing, which is a good thing. Here's the model that we've developed. There's mission, there's vision over here, there's values. The discussion of these are always informative. You'd be surprised how much you probably agree with these and maybe have a little bit of probably some disagreement over here. Then you get input from stakeholders and employees and others, maybe partner agencies or strategic partners out there. And then you have those strategic elements, and these are just an example set, but there could be finance, infrastructure, organization of partnerships, administration, regulatory relations. You can imagine that might be a length of bar that you would all develop. And then you create an objective and strategy for each one of those. And then there are goals and actions and initiatives that support each of those as we're trying to make that mission reality. You take the highest priority ones and you start working those through. What does the next 5 years of implementation look like? And that's such a key element because board members need to know that, okay, we cast vision, how are we going to get there? You have the opportunity then to say, in our best professional judgment, and you bounce that off and there's discussion and discourse about it. So as using it, you revisit it annually as your planning tool, you implement those actions that must be programmed, you use it as your roadmap, you annually refine the document, you promote it as your plan, you distribute it to the public regulators, employees, and anyone else who needs it. It becomes, when item number 4 on the agenda has reference to the strategic plan, you reference that strategic plan. When you develop the budget, you reference the strategic plan. Everything has to be, you have to work hard to integrate it and make it part of the life of the district. But it becomes more real and more useful that way. So here's our process. We get input, we do a board workshop, we develop an implementation plan. I don't develop it, I work with your staff to develop it. Then we make a review draft document out of it, and we come back to the board for a tone check. We saw where you want to go at the workshop. Here's what we think it'll take to get you there. What do you think? So there's 2 board workshops there. Then you refine that. From that, you then at some point you iterate here, and you come back to the board. It usually takes 3 to 5 months. And the ranges are all over there are lots of options there. And you can get it done cheaper than that. Well, you can get a strategic plan cheaper than that. Let me say that you can get a plan cheaper than that. How much input you get, so there are options you can pull off of the I think I proposed somewhere around 21K. You can pull it back from that if you diminish the input up front. In other words, it's just about time. How detailed or prescriptive you want your implementation plan to be. How much assistance from the consultant is needed. How much direct consultant assistance on the back end of the document writing is needed. And then how you want it to look when it's done. Those are kind of the choice points in there that could potentially make it even less. This is just some of the clients. We're right up to about 100 now that we've done over the last number of years. I don't think I wouldn't venture to guess that's more than anybody else or whatever, but there are a lot of agencies, and we don't do it just for water or wastewater. We do it for all plans, airport districts, harbor districts, healthcare districts, sanitary districts. So, I did not spend much time with my proposal. I did this, over a month ago, but I'd be happy to answer questions of the board relative to the process that you've seen, the kind of the basis of why we do it the way we do it, and the specifics of the proposal, if you like.
Good. If I can get you to shut off your projector, then the board can move back up.
I will do it. I've got business cards here if anybody's interested, by the way.
Always a good thing. Good. Well, let's start with questions from the audience, if we have any.
Maybe we should mention a complete staff report there that we invited all potential candidates for the board of directors, and 2 of them showed up.
Yes.
We have White Wilson and Bill Huber in the audience.
So I don't see any speaker slips, but I will ask that you fill one out after you speak if you have a question, please. Bill, if you would come up to the microphone.
Brett, in all deference to you, that I don't think we should have taken any action on this at all, period, until after the election. That I don't see a strategic plan like this has an urgency that has to be done this month versus starting what amounts to almost, 3 weeks from now? Okay, it sends out the wrong message. It sends out the message that it's reflecting the current board's goals instead of waiting until a new board is assembled. It will be 1, 2, or possibly 3 different board members. And I just think that it could wait that long because it really reflects the existing board's input on something going forward that should be a new board's input. The invitation to participate is inherently unequal because we have no legal standing. We're basically spectators. And finally, that to be able to evaluate anything, to get a document 48 hours before the meeting that's over 50 pages long, is not sufficient time to review that beforehand. So I just think the whole process is flawed right from the beginning, that it could have waited for another 3 weeks before even starting on this. Thank you.
Are you done?
Yep.
Thank you. Anyone else? Wyatt?
Okay, mine's going to be a Q&A because I just, since we started the process, I have a concern and I have a question. The concern was that I heard a lot of sort of almost preaching to the board as to what board responsibility is. So my concern is can you give me some examples of your listening capacity and your ability to listen to input from those that you were mentoring? Because I really got the feeling I was kind of being preached to. So if you could kind of give me examples on how you might evolve the process of, which is potentially to the board and getting their participation.
I really understand. And I think that what's built into the proposal is an input stage, which is my listening stage. And that's what I propose, that I listen to the district employees and get them together. They have a perspective, that there'd be public meetings to understand their, all of this is trying to get information to inform and inform the board as they meet in their workshop, and then designated partner agencies as well. And I hope that I had admitted enough up front that I was delving a little bit into governance, but I'm not going to apologize for that.
Thank you.
I think Dwight has a follow-up.
Dwight, do you have a follow-up?
No,
you need to be at the microphone.
Okay, I don't want to get into debate with you. I guess my concern is I tend to think that folks up there know how to govern. They've been doing it for a long time. And my concern in the proposal, and I don't know you and I'm just giving you some feedback, is that I would have appreciated if I were in this group, and I'm speaking for myself, that would check on the governing capacity before you making expectations for that. So it makes me a little nervous thinking that there has to be a presentation on governance to a group that's pretty veteran in that capacity. And that makes me nervous, because then if that's the kind of the presentation out the gate, then how would that process go if indeed you were selected? And that was my question to you, is how you, just to get a better feel for what
I understand. I think that there is a built-in good governance component to every strategic plan. There should be. It's presumptive that the board will practice good governance procedures and will, in fact, even adopt perhaps some that they feel they've got some gap in as part of their strategy. Because everything that the strategic plan proposes is dependent upon a board that can function properly. I presume that every board has a certain amount of need to get better. No one board has arrived. I'm with 3 boards a week, and I can tell you, I certainly don't want to cast any dispersions upon you, board, but I can tell you, I've been at this for 23 years myself, we all can learn something. Talking about it is how we learn. I didn't mean to be preachy to you. I hope you didn't feel put upon. But quite frankly, I do teach these classes, and some of it's going to bleed over.
Thank you. Bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was an interesting presentation, but I thought maybe I would just give you a little feedback from my perspective. I'm a member of the community, and what's interesting about the Montara Water and Sanitary District is the community really thinks of it as their company. We're shareholders. We bought out a private water company so that we could be in control of our own destiny. And I noticed there was a lack of input. You seem to just focus on employees and the board and not the community. And so just to make you aware, I think what you'll see in this process, which may be different from other processes, is that there will be a fairly active community involvement. And I actually think that that also helps the process, because in the end, the board as elected officials are always trying to make sure that they're in tune with the community.
Thank you.
Sure. There's just a little confusion now. I know there was a bit about trying to get the cart ahead of the horse, but I think the actual presentation by you and the other people is right now it's at a high-level evaluation stage. Tonight it's only informational. So I'm pretty sure that this is not going to even come to a vote until after the election. So as a matter of getting the documents out, it's an informational thing only. This will be revisited and voted upon with whatever that future board may have. So I just wanted to make sure that people were clear on the process. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any more questions from the audience? We will close the public hearing then and go to the board. Questions from the board? Gentlemen.
Where are the 50 pages? Because I only got like 8.
Now, Clemens, did you provide the what we had received from each of the firms to the candidates?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm guessing that's the reference is the actual proposals that were presented to the board at the previous meeting.
Okay.
Right. We have also the slideshow available, and we'll send that out to the board and the candidates later.
Okay.
I didn't feel preached at. I'm always willing to learn. I mean, learn how to do things and how to improve. I really appreciate your comments on how the board can work better together, and I think that'd be a great contribution to this board for the future. I think that seems to be your strength, and I really appreciate that. So I would look forward if we choose you. I'd look forward to learning on how boards might interact better. I think that's a great part of your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Scott.
Yeah, I'm a little sympathetic to the preaching thing, although I gave it some thought as I was listening to it, because I was sitting here thinking, look, everybody up here has done this at least 10 years. I've been in it 15 and a half, others have been in longer. But as I thought about it, if you weren't able to converse with that kind of knowledge, I'd be much more concerned that we'd be just looking at a facilitator, and I don't want just a facilitator, just to be real frank. I've seen professional facilitators who come in, and generally what I see from them is that they manufacture consent from a preconceived agenda, and they're brought in to have the process, pull a few interesting quotes, and produce a document that miraculously comes out looking like it could have come out, 2 weeks before. I think we saw such a document recently with the Princeton planning, where it had facilitated meetings, and lo and behold, 24 hours after the last meeting, the consultant, the facilitator, produced a report. Looks like the meetings were held to get some pull quotes to support the preconceived notions. And it just, to me, as someone who's been a long time observer of these processes, that they should have waited 3 weeks just to give it an air of believability. So I kind of had both reactions, but in the end, I'm like, okay, so here's someone who is conversant. I do think the point is well made that the community is fiercely independent. We've accomplished a lot of things. Many of us got into this whole business on the for the community back when Caltrans wanted to pave 6 lanes over the mountain, and the community figured out that if we got educated, if we got together, we could actually achieve a thing or two. And I don't know if you drove through the tunnel on the way here, but if you didn't, I would encourage you to drive through it on the way out. It's about the same distance getting home. Believe it or not, it really is. I commute to the South Bay, and I came home through the tunnel tonight. Helped me avoid heavy traffic on 92. Yeah. So I know from not only your proposal, but one of the other proposals that we received that you and others have put some real serious time into getting to understand this district. I understand that Clemens spent a lot of time with everyone to offer the information. It was really good for me to see that you absorbed a lot of that and incorporated it into your proposal. And I don't have that in front of me tonight, but I did read all of it when it was presented to us at the last one. So I think this is a good complement. I would, since we have you here, if we could have just a little bit more about the process of what happens. You had basically what happens next, kind of in one slide.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could elaborate just a bit.
The first thing I do actually is I work with Clemens, and I have to presume the steps that we're going through and make sure that we're appropriately set up for those steps, and we know how things are going to happen logistically. And I request documents and background and do all of that kind of work in the office. And then we need to schedule a 2-day, generally it's a 2-day information, or 2 or 3 day, depending on the process that we decide on relative to the public input is generally the wild card there. You do it a little differently than the one down the street, as I said earlier. And so I want to make sure that we design that public input process for you, for this district. And so we schedule that, once we determine how that's going to happen. And then I come in and we do all that public. There are interviews with you all individually. There are the public inputs, there's the employee inputs, and then there's also the partner agencies as determined again during that initial phase. And so gather all that input, then I go away and put that input into in a fashion that you can absorb it during a board workshop. So next we plan a board workshop. So you've spent an hour or so with me. 4 or 5 weeks later, there's 2 or 3 weeks later, depending on how quickly we can schedule it, is our board workshop. It's generally 4 to 6 hours long, depending on how detailed we want to get. And the outcome, the deliverables of that are a review of the mission with basis. In other words, why is the mission there? Why are these words important? What do these words mean to everyone? Let's make sure we're on the same page. Then a development of a vision and value statements. And then we do that bar of organizing the plan. So everyone understands, based on the mission, vision, values, and this organization, we can expect a document to come back organized in this way. After that workshop, I work with Clemens and his staff to put meat on the bones of that organization. And depending, that could take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks later, we have a draft document that we bring back to you as that phone check meeting. Very important that we don't just presume that, okay, here's what it's going to, what the implementation that it's going to take to fulfill the vision that the board has cast. So we want to test that tone check. And so we do that, and that's always a very interesting and important meeting because you all get to see and feel, and in some cases even vote on the specific methodologies that have been put out there. Sometimes the priorities might be a little shifted. You all might have a different way of looking at it. So that tone check is very, very important. We make the adjustments from the tone check, and then you have another shot at another meeting in the future. That will be generally a regular meeting where you get to review it and have another shot at the strategic plan before you approve it.
Thank you. I want to, just to wrap my comments, just affirm that the action that we took at the September 5th meeting was to go ahead and hear from the companies making the proposals, and then defer any action on that until after the board is seated in December. So this is a learning experience, but make available for everyone to pay attention to now, but decisions be postponed. And right now, plans for this got started back in August. The notion that the board should put on hold any notion of putting together a vision or a plan because of an election, sure, fine. You're entitled to your opinion, but I don't believe the function of the board stops or gets put on hold because we have this every 2-year thing that happens. We've got work to do. If we do something wrong in the time leading up to the election is the time when the electorate can let us know that something went sideways. So we did take the step to defer action until after. What's happening now is not us conveying our vision to the consultants, but rather the consultants conveying to us, to all of us, how they work and what it would look like to work with them.
Chris?
So, to your point, Scott, I think the issue with respect to the election isn't so much that we can't listen before that occurs. The real issue, I think, was the opportunity cost of taking the time to do this now and to discuss it now. The impact with the election is that we've got 1 to 3 board members that are leaving. We have a general manager who hasn't received a performance appraisal for the 2012-13 year that ended June 30th. He doesn't have objectives to be evaluated against for the new year, and we're a quarter of the way into that. There's been no action from the Personnel Committee. I thought when you were looking at this in August that was on track, but it hasn't been. So that's the important thing about the election. The people that were working with Clemens don't have an opportunity to weigh in on that process. To your presentation, I liked it. I think a pragmatic approach is critically important. To have something that is usable. I think to have something that kind of bridges the vision, gets it down into something that's like a 5-year pragmatic execution is great. A couple questions. I mean, you've got an earful. I mean, I've never been at a board meeting like tonight's. I was intrigued by your designated partner agencies, and particularly given the animosity that we've got here, what do you think a designated partner agency is? And while I appreciate this planning process, I don't see a lot of constructive value going out to CCWD and sitting down, you and Clemens sitting down and talking to them, or talking to the county. At the same time, if we don't repair those relationships, which went bad largely not out of our behavior, but we're on one end of those relationships. How does the strategic planning process deal with that context?
I think there's 2 ways. I have a lot of clients that have similar history, where they could be on either side of that in result. But I think, presuming there are relatively cordial relationships, just the olive branch of saying, look, we're going to do a strategic plan. What kinds of things do you anticipate might be strategic in our collective future? that doesn't commit anybody to anything. It just creates a list of things that could potentially,
It opens
from
a
another
dialogue.
perspective, it's a
It opens
perspective
dialogue.
thing.
Yeah.
That being said, the construct of that list of who are strategic partners and who are not, what are strategies we may want to go down and we may not want to go down, may be secondary to the initial input. They may be in the strategy to, one of the strategic initiatives might be to improve or to strengthen relationships with a particular agency. But it may be quite the opposite too, depending on where the board wants to go. I mean, this is part of the challenge that a strategic plan presents to a board, is what is our strategy relative to strategic relationships? What is going to be necessary and important out in the future in terms of our larger regional needs? All those things get wrapped up into the discussion if we indeed, I can't imagine going too far into the process without having an element of discussion around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought that was an excellent vision statement. I think the whole controversy we've got is around strategy and what happened when we executed against it. So my question is, and I believe that it's a strategy to isolate. It's a strategy to repair relationships. So is that, otherwise if you're ignoring the externals, your set of what you can potentially do is different.
Right, and therein is the
Both
strategic
ways.
discussion.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That really frames the strategic
So my
discussion.
question is, how often have you dealt with those kinds of issues? My guess is probably a lot.
It's amazing how much, especially with water, wastewater, where there, and you all have a regional agency, and so you have these interfaces.
Yeah.
Sometimes they work better than others.
Yeah.
Sometimes they need to be repaired. Sometimes they honestly need to be disbanded because they're dysfunctional in the relationship. They're not efficient any longer.
Right.
Or there needs to be another approach at a relationship. So in almost every strategic plan we do, there's something that says something about our stance relative to the region, whether it be individual relationships or broader relationships, or it might be just a kind of a boilerplate statement about value the relationships of those with those public agencies around us. It's a discussion.
Thank you.
But it happens a lot.
Okay, are you done? Jim?
Brent, I just wanted to tell you that based on what Bob said, Bob's comments, we do have functional relationships with adjacent districts. We really do. Bob has worked, Clemens, we've worked with adjacent districts. SAM board. Scott and I are the SAM reps on the SAM board. You know something? We have the most functional SAM board I have ever seen.
For Brent, it's a sewer authority mid-coast side. It's a joint powers agency between a city and two sewer districts, of which we are one. Thank you.
I just want to tell you that the SAM board members, all of the present SAM board members are getting along extremely well together. We are getting a lot accomplished. We got the wet weather project accomplished. We're getting repairs, significant repairs on the intertie. We are working very well with adjacent districts. And because, I have to respond to this, one of the board members present has made an issue of that we don't get along, or that we don't want to get along with adjacent district members. That's that one board member's opinion. The proof and the evidence is that we do get along with them. SAM board, Bob's work. I communicate with other board members on other districts. It's been made an issue, and others, it's not. I just want you to know that this is a functional board. except for that one exception at this, which is a temporary issue at this point.
Well, gee, I'm going to
Thank you.
respond to that.
Sure, go ahead,
You tell
Chris.
me when, Catherine.
Why don't you respond now, if you can make it brief, please?
So,
I'd like to stick to
I
the
have a lot
agenda.
of respect and appreciation for both Scott and Jim and their work on the board, but I wouldn't say the board is functional. They just lost their general manager largely due to the inability of the board to resolve what in relative terms were fairly minor issues. There are long-standing issues with Sam. But I would say that they're not of our creation, that these two guys, I think, do a great job representing us at that agency. I don't believe we have a constructive relationship with CCWD. And I think potentially going forward that could get worse because of the responsibility we share for a watershed that's between us. So it isn't just me. And I think I appreciate the fact that Jim feels attacked and he needs to defend himself and he's up for re-election. But the position I've tried to take is, pardon?
That's okay.
Thank you for that comment,
It's okay.
Chris.
In fact, you would be my third vote of the three. I have a lot of respect for Jim.
You did get to vote.
Pardon?
You do get to vote.
I did vote, and
Okay.
I'll disclose, I voted for Jim. A couple other guys, too. But I guess my concern is that in this community in particular, going back to the tunnel that was being described, there's a lot of potential for polarization. And there are people at both ends of those continuums that just think anybody's not in their position and seeing things their way is walking on the dark side. And my experience is if you really think that the other party's intent is malicious, that the dialogue evaporates. And that's what we really need. We need dialogue. Do you feel like you're the kind of person that could come into that kind of situation?
I'm sorry, I thought you were rebutting. Frankly,
Well, gee, let me ask a
Let
question.
him
Or do you have a
ask his
problem with that
question,
responding
and
to
then
that
we'll be
question,
done.
Scott?
Chris,
Do you have a problem with the question?
Chris, ask your question, please.
I did ask my question.
I didn't hear it. Please
No.
repeat it.
My question is, given what you're just now seeing and what I've described and what others have described, a lot of difference in terms of how we're perceiving the situation.
Right.
Are you capable of walking into a situation like that and helping?
I think the process that you're going to go through with the strategic plan has the best hope of helping it. And I'll tell you why. I do board dynamics workshops all the time where there are situations like this, and I'm moving over to the governance thing again. But
And you're not preaching, right?
I'm trying not to. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
Trying to coalesce a board and get you all to believe that one thing, the one big thing that you all believe, the one thing that you all have allegiance to is that mission. Now, at least there's something to work from there. But the strategic plan has to be built out of the mission. There's nothing else to build it on. There's too much opinion with everything else. There's too much diversity of viewpoint of everything else. And so that's why it's so important to work over that mission. And these discussions don't have to. The problem is once they go over the slippery slope of distrust, once they get into distrust and personal, once it gets personal, it's very hard to get back up that hill and repair it.
Well,
It's
the
almost
Brown Act-
impossible.
And the Brown Act makes it even worse in that sense.
Well, it creates a framework that makes that has some constraints. But I don't pretend to be able to repair your personal relationships. But I think you should have a board and board processes and procedures and protocols and guidelines that allow this thing to happen without, if humanly possible at this point, without it getting to the point where it gets dysfunctional. And even this is not dysfunctional. You could take a vote right now, and most of your votes are probably still 5-0. Maybe.
4-1.
Okay. Most of them 4. But everyone's got, see, can I look everybody in the eye and say, yeah, I'm going to be open? I mean, this is not strategic planning we're talking about here. This is an element of the strategic plan called board development. So there's an element within your strategic plan that says, yeah, we ought to have that in year 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Because the board, see, if you do have 2 or 3 new members, that's another reason to have those protocols and procedures and guidelines that create the basis within which the policies within which the board will work. Absent those, it comes apart real quick, and it frays at the edges, and then it gets ugly.
Chris, are you done?
So I don't know if I really answered you, Chris.
No, you did fine.
It's very difficult, though, I can tell you that.
Okay, you're done. Scott, you had a comment.
Sure. On the Brown Act, you're not going to find a stronger advocate for the Brown Act on this board than me. I've taken a soapbox stand on this many a time, and I'm going to say that the Brown Act doesn't get in the way, does not complicate what it is that we're doing. It guarantees that the public's business is done in public. The public process, and I really appreciated you mentioned that the board is composed of co-equals. The rancor that we currently have on the board is because one member has forgotten this. And as
I object to that.
Excuse me,
Don't put
Chris?
words in my mouth.
Chris, no one interrupted you.
No, but if
Please.
he's gonna
Chris?
attack me personally, I'm gonna say something.
Chris,
I'm sorry.
I didn't hear that as an attack, and yes,
Oh, I
you should
did.
be sorry.
I did.
Well, you can hear it the way you want to, but
That's
please
right.
don't interrupt.
So, while I appreciate the continued affirmation or the respect that you have for me and Jim, I'm going to be really clear to the audience who has witnessed some of this since about August. The rancor has been brought about consistently through bossing and insistence. And it really comes down to now, okay, so we're very clear, despite how excited we were when Chris volunteered to step up and take on this responsibility. I anticipated something more along the lines of coming back in, getting back up to speed, and then bringing a lot of expertise to bear.
Excuse me, is this about what the agenda
I
item is?
believe you stepped out to,
Is this about what is on the
I
agenda?
think he's getting to the point.
No, I think this
Chris,
isn't on
if
the
you
point
don't
at
like
all.
the way I run the meeting, then you run and you can be president. But right now, I'm running the meeting, so please, let him finish.
No, I won't, because
Then
that's
please
off
leave.
topic. No,
Then
I'm not
please leave.
leaving either.
Then please be quiet.
Honestly, Chris, I think you opened the door, and with
Okay, as long as I can respond, I'm fine.
well,
No, this is not
Right.
going to
But
go
if
back
this-
and forth and back
Okay,
and
then I
forth.
think you ought to cut it off.
Well,
If you want
Then I
me to
should have,
respond.
then I should
if
have
you want
cut,
me to
no, then I
respond.
should have cut you off much earlier.
No, perhaps you shouldn't have come in loaded to rebut my editorial piece. That's
No.
what happened.
I came in to answer questions. I've received phone calls about people concerned about statements that they've read about this district
Okay,
being
so is
put
that
at risk.
part of the agenda? I'm happy to have that
No,
dialogue,
you
Catherine.
brought that up. That was my president's statement. You're the one who responded during public comment. So, could we let Scott finish, please?
So, I think some of the current topic, I'm not anticipating that any of the candidates who are running are going to be bringing this kind of thing in. I may be wrong, but what I know is, in over 15 years on this board, both here and another 10 or so on the SAM board, we've been through some real rough patches. I mentioned at the last meeting that Bob and I have battle scars. But one of the things that we've done is we're passionate about the business of the public, and we are willing to engage. And it does get heated from time to time, but by and large, we've managed to work our way through it. And Chris made a mention of what happened at SAM, I'll give you my unvarnished view of what happened at SAM. I think that the general manager took an approach with the city of Half Moon Bay at a presentation to the city council where he was essentially being given direct instructions by the city of Half Moon Bay, their manager, and some of their city council members, when in fact, the manager of the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast reports to one organization and one organization only, and that is the board of directors of the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast. And he had the temerity to note to them that they could have their representatives bring these desires to the SAM board, and frankly, great umbrage was taken. And from where I sat watching for meeting after meeting from then on, they came gunning for him. And the failure to resolve on a rather seemingly small issue. Chris, I will note that very few people were in the closed sessions. I happened to be there. I can understand why someone might have that point of view. I would indicate that point of view is not correct. That does come through my frame and my lens on that, but I do believe that the intention was to run them off. I believe that the goal was achieved. We worked very hard to find some common ground, and we surprisingly made a lot of progress together, and I thought right down to the last minute that we might have it. The fact of the matter is, by that point, the manager had already been put through hell, and it was his choice to step away from that. And I think, frankly, given the animosity being shown to him by the one agency, I don't know that it was a bad choice for him. I'm sorry that it happened. I fought very hard to try to find an accommodation that we could all work with. So did Jim. Jim put a tremendous amount of energy and a lot of himself into that. Feel free to judge us on the outcome, but I will tell you that I'm proud of the work done to try to take a very bad situation built out of, frankly, I thought venality, or not venality, but it was just ugly. I thought it was wrong-headed, and I think the agency is going to pay a price for that. That said, the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side is passing budgets and getting projects done, and Half Moon Bay has actually come back to the table and is participating in a large material way on a project that, frankly, 2 years ago, I would have been surprised that they would even be willing to consider it. 2 years ago, they were not participating in the wet weather project, which we in Granada managed to find a way to team up on and get done, one that we're very pleased with. But I think part of seeing that we're dead serious about getting good projects done for the community brought Half Moon Bay back into the fold on that. We made, I believe, some very compelling arguments, both on that front and on the avoiding fines from the regulators front and on the keeping beaches clean front. I think we put it together into a nice package, and the fact of the matter is we're getting along famously with Half Moon Bay and Granada right now. So the characterization that we're not, frankly, I've been at every single one of those meetings. I'm fairly comfortable making this statement, and feel free to call Rick Kowalczyk to see if I'm wrong, because I don't think I am. So I think what we're looking at here is one way or another, this too will pass. And I think one thing was said, and just should you wind up being the one we're working with, I want you to know, along with everyone else, there was a comment made about coming from our positions. I reject positional negotiation. I'm a student of the Harvard Negotiation Project and the approach that they advocate and teach for reaching an understanding and finding mutual benefit in outcomes. And it's an approach that it does not disadvantage me at all to tell you how I negotiate. It's a matter of principled negotiation from an understanding of mutual interests. This is why I sat down with one of my strongest political opponents on CCWD and had coffee and had a very lengthy conversation about how we might be able to advance recycled water. Much of the talking points being trotted out we hear every few years, and it comes from the same people supporting them, and that's part of the political landscape here. But I'm just going to the issue of what you're looking at right now. I want to actually say there's a lot more to it and a lot more goodness going on than it might look. And honestly, there's some people in the audience who, if this is the one they chose to tune in on, I want to make sure they understand. It's all part of the political landscape, but at the end of the day, we're getting things done. And I'm looking forward to taking the kinds of things that we've been working on for years and consolidating them into a vision document with an action plan, something that is good for, honestly, we've tried a number of different ways to set real measurable criteria for our general manager to perform against. And I'm eager to have a document that provides the general manager with that kind of guidance, something objective, measurable, and something where a majority of the board has put the stamp on and said this is the way we want to go. I'm looking forward to that. So I really appreciate you coming out, taking the time, and and getting much more informed on what you might be in for than you might have thought.
At least you can say you've had fair warning. Bob, do you have any more comments?
Yeah, the board, regardless of election, has done, will continue to do its work, and decisions of putting it off are being done because we need to take the time to review, not because there's an election coming up. We've been open to the public. But I would even say even if we were ready to make a decision, I don't think it would be wise at this point with the landscape the way it is. 2 days wouldn't be enough to deal with this board. You'd have to spend 2 weeks. It'd be too damn expensive. And I wouldn't want to see us spend that kind of money. We're acting too much like a for-profit corporation than we are a board that's doing business for the public. So, but I appreciate your time and your presentation.
Can I ask Brent one more?
No, you can't.
Okay.
You've gotten to speak twice.
I wanted to ask Brent a question.
Well, you lost your chance. You need to write them down.
Okay.
I don't want any more lecture. I haven't spoken, so I'm going to take very few minutes. I'm the one who asked to have this on the agenda. I started asking some months ago to have it planned in as part of the budget. And in fact, we're not the only district on the coast doing it. The school district is working on its strategic plan and invited MWSD a couple weeks ago. Clemens and Jim went. I was unable to attend. I was in Michigan with personal health problems in Ed's family. I will say our mission statement was long fought. We've only been a water district 10 years. The reason I asked to have a strategic plan built is because this is a district in transition, and I think we need, and as Bill Kehoe said, we need to involve the public. I do like the fact that of the proposals that we have, you do involve staff and neighboring districts. And I think that for this district, our staff lives in the district. We are somewhat unique in that we are a new water district, we're an old sewer district. And so we are very complex. And I think as the board changes, it's important to realize that the community has helped and stepped forward with where they want this board to go. As all the members of this board have said tonight, in one way or another, we are all here doing the will of the public. Not all of the public, some of us represent one portion, others represent another portion, but as you said, now I see that you have proposed this to take 35 weeks?
Up to. So much of it depends on scheduling, really. The availability of people, board members included, board workshops, staff. Those are ranges in there. It's impossible to tell. I mean, that's just my experience, having worked with so many.
Right.
It can oftentimes take that.
Well, as Scott mentioned, if you did a few interviews and came out with a strategic plan in 2 days, I might be a little more concerned. What do you see, what is the process? You talked about follow-up, annual follow-up tuning, so to speak. What does that involve? It didn't stick in my head.
Sure.
And so what's the cost? What's the tuning? Is it something that we sign up for when we commit to this contract? What does
No.
it involve in terms of public staff, neighboring agencies, et
I
cetera?
understand. Generally, what I recommend is during the duration of the first 5 years, you every year, usually in January or February, in order to inform the budget processes, you have a board workshop. You do not have to have it facilitated, although it's oftentimes recommended, depending, especially the first one, because that's the most important. You've lived with your strategic plan for a year. You now may need to do some adjustments. And so the board spends time looking at where we've been, how it's worked, what's different now than it was then, what kind of adjustment. And the other thing that does, it allows, if there's an election during that period, it allows the new board members to put their stamp and have their say about the direction and so forth. So it really, you open it up long enough to reconstruct it and refine it and then launch it again. I think that therein, as the implementation plan may change some, you can reflect the changes in your budget year that you're right in the middle of preparing in January and February and getting ready for budget year anyway. It usually, like I said, it doesn't have to be facilitated. I'm recommending more and more that it is, just because that way it gets done. My concern is that if you don't maintain your strategic plan, it can roll over you, and it becomes actually almost more of a liability than a benefit. And so I think that it's important that you do that every year. That being said, the other times you visit it during the year are certainly up to the board. You can ask for a semi-annual update. You can integrate it with the evaluation of your general manager. All that should be integrated. Mm-hmm. And you should, for cause as well, if something happens that's untoward, that says this first year that was planned in this way, we need to pull this item out because now this item we didn't anticipate came in. That needs to now go down in year 2. But that's a managed and clear process. Right. So that you can see that now what we were going to do in year 1 is now going to happen in year 2. The clarity of that is so important to keep in front of all of you, so that you stay together as you move forward, you stay on the same track. Otherwise, it can diverge and you can get in trouble. Okay. And so again, the cost of these annual kind of updates is on a time and materials and travel basis, essentially. It is. It's usually. It's not that much. I mean, it's just a matter of the number of hours that are necessary. It's nowhere near as involved, naturally, as the input that you would get. But it is a public meeting. You make sure that you get the word out in the way that you generally get the word out. Maybe even more. Maybe you make a real sincere effort to try to get people in to inform the process during that. Okay. And how far out do you go in looking at your interviews with, quote, partner agencies? Are they simply physically adjacent? Are they you all know that better than I. Okay. Quite frankly, you know who your partner. So it's kind of how much we want to spend, and well, there's time in there now for that kind of a thing with the given proposed amount. You're talking about during the initial strategic plan. Yeah. There's time in there, but it's generally a meeting where we would have them come in and talk to them. If you want to pull them apart and we go out and talk to them individually, it is a departure from that. Okay. Clemens, how did they do that with the school district? Was it an interview between you and the strategic plan developer? Was it?
No, it was a workshop for all public agencies on the coast side, or actually the ones that were invited. It wasn't all of them. And it was interesting enough, it was only a facilitator present. So nobody represented the school. Otherwise, it becomes a question and answer period, and board members get up and say, no, they got it wrong. Yeah, what we want is input, and so we try to facilitate input at that point. Okay. But we need to bring every bit of input to the board for the workshop. That's important, that the board hear what was said. Good, and I'm going to close with an apology. It is Halloween, it is election season, and passions are running high, and spooks and goblins are out haunting all of us, I believe, and
Usually our board is not nearly as passionate. I have been told by many people that this is the board they tune into to sleep. So this really is unusual in that regard.
Passionate's not bad.
This is the one they'll
It's a
have
matter
to
of
take to
channeling
wake up to now. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. If we come up with any more questions, each of us can
Feel
send
free.
them to Clemens and get your responses. Let's move on to reports. Sewer Authority, Midcoast side.
There's been nothing to report at this time.
Okay, Midcoast Community Council. Bill, would you like to report?
There's really nothing to report. The last community council meeting was turned over to the League of Women Voters for the candidates forum for the Granada Sanitary District. And as of right now, I don't have the upcoming agenda, so it's hard for me to say what's on the
Okay.
docket.
Thank you. Aqua?
Nothing at the moment, no.
Okay, CSDA, I received a note today from the CSDA. They are looking for suggestions for legislation. They have some fairly specific requirements for the suggested legislation. It should benefit all special districts, and so I'm thinking that what I am going to do is work with Dave. I had talked about trying to figure out a way to find a way for this district to finance connections to wells for existing well owners, and maybe, but it will take us change in the state law for us to be able to do it, from what I can tell. So maybe we could give a very brief draft of some suggested general legislation that might be able to help with that. Integrated Regional Water Management Plan.
Yeah, how did we do in contacting CCWD about our next meeting, or at least getting availability?
I have to follow up on that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I do actually have another comment when it comes to the integrated regional water management that I could also make during the manager's statement, but I attended the Groundwater Resources Association, and it was very interesting to hear the opening speech from Mark Cohen, who is the head of the Department of Water Resources. And he actually highlighted the importance of regional integrated water management. And I think that's really something that is California-wide, something that they're really trying to concentrate and focus much more on it. Some interesting aspects here are that they're focusing very much on no transfer of impacts between regions. So this plays, of course, with the Delta region, the problematic that is there. So essentially they're saying regions need to assess their own risk, and essentially asking for a development of groundwater management plans for local sustainable groundwater management. So I think this is really important that we continue talking to Coast County Water District.
Well, besides that, we also had tried some years ago to establish with CCWD and CalX, the IWR.
Sanitary County Resources Conservation District.
I mean, these are things that we've been doing for years, Chris.
There was a prior attempt to work with folks on the coast, and I think we should really pick this up. In general, the notion that I've seen throughout the conference was also in this speech from Mark Cohen. We see water resources diminish throughout California and demand increase. And I want to mention this because we're in a different position. We actually did it the other way around. We were able to decrease the demand and increase our water resources. So I think that's something that we really achieved here. Another interesting note that I made here was that actually on the California coast, it's fairly common to use groundwater, so they're essentially saying the coastal districts use 90% of their water is groundwater. Only one of the exceptions is the Bay Area. There's only 5% of groundwater use throughout the coastal region here. That, of course, was due to SP's availability of HHE1. So I thought that was just very interesting, talking about the integrated regional water management, and I think I see definite need to
Continue that,
discussions
yes.
and maybe think independently or jointly about the preparation of a water management plan.
There was a $10,000 attempt to help pay for that with Telex and CCWD. I remember that 5-6 years ago, because I know we tried that. There was some plan that nobody would pay for, and we were going to, I don't think that ever went anywhere, but that was one of the things that was supposedly to come out, because I had gone to those Aqua integrated meetings, and that was the big push at that time, get the regions to talk, and instead of dealing with district by district by district, start talking region by region, and that was it.
Right.
For our success, the folks at home are the ones who really helped reduce and allow the moratorium. I mean, we may have facilitated that, but the hard work and lifting for that is every single homeowner has reduced their water use or is managing their water use.
Right. The attempt to set up an integrated regional water management plan was started by George Urban at the
Yes.
time, so I wasn't involved.
Yes, okay. Attorney's report.
We have nothing to report.
Okay, director's reports. One at a time, and there's no rebuttal.
I've said everything you say.
Okay, Bob?
I would like to thank Chris for not voting for me.
You're welcome. Scott?
I'll mention the one afterthought on the SAM report. We are moving ahead. We've got the search firm already engaged, finding candidates, distributing brochures, and we'll hear more on that at the next SAM meeting.
Is it the so they can reuse some of the info?
Oh yeah, it was very heavy reuse of the brochure that we had before.
Okay.
So it was actually less expensive than last time because it doesn't take as much work.
Jim?
Nothing further to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Do we need to go back in closed session, or are we done?
No, I think we're done. And I have nothing to say in addition. So we have general manager's report.
That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, and we were adjourned. Thank you very much.